3:31 p.m. on the second Wednesday of the month of August. I would call this meeting of the Rental Housing Advisory Board to order. Can we begin with a roll call, please?
Margie Davy.
Here.
Katrina DeGroot.
Here.
Timothy Ernst.
Here.
Danny Garcia. Steve Herman.
Here.
Todd Hutchison. Linda DeValtis.
Here.
Thank you. At this time, we would like to invite any citizens who have statements to please approach the microphone and address the board. Citizen statements are limited to 3 minutes and must address items that are not listed on the Rental Housing Advisory Board meeting agenda. These are limited to issues that have are limited to issues that have an impact on the city of Oshkosh, and the Rental Housing Advisory Board may address at a future meeting, and must not include endorsements of any candidates or other electioneering. Any citizen statements, please?
Hi, my name's Mert Wall. I just moved from Spokane, Washington to Oshkosh here in May.
Can you please state your name and your address for the record again, please?
Merton. Last name is Wall, W-A-L-L. 170 Cimarron Court, Apartment D, Oshkosh, 54902.
Thank you.
But anyway, I moved here, and I never even checked out the places or that. You know, I just seen what was on Craigslist. And I get here, and there's numerous things that weren't done to the place. But it's been a big pain in the butt since I moved there. I mean, I've been hassled. I've been, just because I called the city inspector because the stuff wasn't getting done there, they retaliated against me. They threatened to evict me. So I wrote a letter of consumer protection. I got it right here, the ones I wrote them. I'm trying to do everything legal. I know they got a lot of problems there. I mean, I know people skip on rent, but they do have a lot of problems down there. I am handicapped, disabled, and there ain't no parking in front of my apartment building. And I got parked on the street or next apartment building over. My garage is, it's a good, block away, but then the spring, the door round don't work. And the heavy's all hell lifted up, and I think they come down, flying down my neck sometime. And I mean, there's just a lot of health hazards there. I mean, rodents, bugs, the gutters. I mean, I got the back unit back there, and I mean, it's just like a waterfall back there, But it's just a mess. And the maintenance there, they don't do nothing. I mean, they do go around and talk about people. That's all they do. And they do harass the tenants there. I know some people that have service animals there, emotional support dogs, and they go around taking pictures of them. I mean, that's harassment. And they can't kick them out because of that, but they threaten them, And it's a Coble Enterprise out of Wausau, Wisconsin that owns this place. I mean, they don't care. No. They don't care a bit, And I don't want to move, but if I got it, they're paying everything, though. They can't evict me just because I just got called Casey or Consumer Protection. I mean, what the heck is going on around here? I mean, I don't know. I come from the state of Washington. I don't know nothing about Oshkosh. It's scary for the wife and I. Mm-hmm. I don't need these people here just harassing us for no reason. And I do have a 6-page document. I did call the cops on them because they were harassing me. I guess the guy got a disorderly conduct on maintenance guy. I just wanted to stop. They got these little spies around there, watching you. It's unreal. It's something else. It's another world there, But I mean, I don't back down. I'm sorry. I didn't do nothing wrong, and I don't deserve this kind of treatment. I ain't the first one playing against them, No. So. But it's not going to stop till something gets done down there.
All right, thank you for your comments, sir. I think, and I can speak for the board when I say that we are working, and we have worked, and we continue to work to make meaningful changes in the city that can address those types of problems. Unfortunately, as has been well established in these meetings, that kind of a lack of respect for tenant rights and for the obligations of landlords is unfortunately common in Oshkosh, which is what sort of motivated the creation of this board in the first place, along with the Rental Housing Advisory Board. Based on what I'm hearing from you, at this time, you're doing everything right, short of moving. You're taking all of the right and taking all the legal remedies that you have at your disposal. We would encourage you to continue to communicate with the city about these issues and continue to, be in contact with consumer protection, like you said. That's sort of the next step above the city in terms of housing enforcement.
I think 9 buildings down there, and I think only one has handicap parking in it. That's it. And that's way, way on the other end. It's not even out my front door, I mean, it'd be nice to have, but, I don't know. It's cold, the way I look at it. It has nothing to do with the city, it's just the man.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
I just want to say thank you for coming today.
Thank you, ladies.
Oh, no, certainly. We would hope that more tenants do come here. Yeah, especially now that we're on television, so the entire city can experience or can come to appreciate kind of the problems that you isolate, because they are problems and we know they are systemic, and we hope to be able to continue to address them in the future. Are there any other statements from citizens? Seeing none, then, we'll move on to item E of the agenda, the approval of the June 12th, 2019 meeting minutes. Any discussion, or do we have a?
I'd make a motion to discuss them. I think that, I think I made a mistake. Under Oshkosh Saturday Farmers Market on page 3, we're only showing 3 dates listed for the farmers market, and it should also include October 5th. We will be there that day also. So when we get down to that further, we can discuss that, like who will be there and stuff, but that was part of the minutes, so. Other than that change, I would make a motion to accept the minutes as corrected.
I second.
All in favor of accepting as corrected?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. We'll move on to item F, the UWO student move-in inspections. So hopefully everyone has had the chance to, or by now you should have looked over the email that the students are intending to send out and provide any feedback or comments. I know Todd got back to us with comments and I made some responses. At this point, then, how do we, are there any comments about the letter itself? I guess we can open this up to Gabby as well.
I would
for
like to
comment.
ask Gabby if she has anything she'd especially like to call our attention to on here.
I did. I have some questions for you guys.
I need you with the microphone though, honey, because we're on TV now, sorry.
So creating this myself, I just copy and pasted the little wave Oshkosh logo. Was that sufficient for you guys to have it kind of like a logo attached to the email? And could I use that logo? I didn't know if you had a specific board branded logo you wanted to use.
We don't. Is it okay if we put this on here, Alan? Or
Let me double check with,
we'll check with legal.
well, it's not legal.
It's copyrighted.
Yeah, it's
the logos.
copyrighted, so I think I have to actually check with Media Services is who I usually check with to see where it's used. But I expect it should be able to be used.
How soon are you anticipating sending this out?
Well, school does not start until September 4th, I believe, so we do have like 3 or 4 weeks left. And I think even sending it, like, we were aiming for that first week of move-in, but I think even just the second week too, if we need to push it back for getting back with you guys, would be just fine. So I think we've got plenty of time. And also too, I've got the approval from both the Oshkosh Student Association and the Communication Club, and they got back to me today too. Obviously, I'm the communication link, so we've got agreement from both those parties that we can send it when it's ready.
Thanks.
And then my final question will be going off some of the comments that you guys made. hopefully printed out were the 3 attachments that were to the email as well, the 3 documents. On one of them was the renter's resources that you guys had on the back of your multicolored brochures. I didn't know if you wanted me to add anything more there, just in lines of who people can call if they wanted to know more, outside of those listed resources. I think that was one of your comments, Tim, was like, under how does it work, kind of explain who they can call if things are happening, like retaliation or things like that.
Right.
Well, if we're going to have the city's logo on it, I would imagine we would want city, the phone number for the rental inspections on here, but would we want to add that under the resources? City of Oshkosh?
Casey's number is there, does that? But yeah, that's,
I'm just, yeah, that's probably sufficient enough. If this whole document's going to be going out, right? So then everything would be, all the city information's on there then too.
yeah, I would probably echo that adding the, housing inspection services to the renter resources section would make sense to me. The only other comment I have then would maybe be on this first page of the resources, what to do when I move in, that the checklist seems too small to be useful.
This
If
is
like-
going out as an email, correct?
Correct.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
always, the link to that from the city website, so my intention was to have them see it and then to be able to click it and print off their own.
Cool.
Yeah.
Satisfies me.
And again, too, communication through Andrea worked really well. Sorry about that email mess up on my end. So if you guys wanted to take time again, too, to look over this, obviously, in whatever time you can spare. Again, we've got like 5 weeks until this would potentially go out, so I'm totally comfortable waiting if you guys wanted to read it a little closer. I know I got that to you today.
We should be able to get that answer to you within a week at the latest.
Perfect. Thank you.
And then if any of the board have any additional comments or suggestions for this letter, you can send them to Andrea, and those will get to Gabby then.
I have to say, Gabby, it looks wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for doing this.
Of course.
And I hope it's as effective as we hope it is.
I hope so too. I was thinking about this today and I was I was struggling with how long it is. Of course, just knowing students that don't like long emails, but my hope is that even if they don't read it and call it in the first week, if maybe once winter comes and they start having problems, they can type in knowing that it was in their inbox, hopefully, or knowing that they remembered seeing that, and just kind of have a jogging memory that we're trying to reach out to them and that they can hopefully have this to be able to pull up when they need it.
Right. It might also be beneficial to send this out like several times a school year,
sure.
especially because new leases,
Well, that, yeah, and
come up and,
semester, or they don't do semesters here anymore. They're
Yeah, they do.
trimesters or whatever.
no, we're talking the college,
Yeah, I
so
know.
it is semesters.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah,
So,
I think these resources are definitely valuable. I mean, as a renter, having moved just a few years ago, was never given anything like this by my landlord, or even when I was living in campus in 2000, that there was just sort of the like, here you go, move in, pay your rent. There is no kind of communication from the university or from the landlord about any stuff like this. Now, granted, this program is new, but yeah, I think it'll be important and beneficial.
When this goes out to the students, who will it be coming from? Not you personally, I trust.
It would be coming from the Com Club, which would have my email attached, and then it would also be coming from the Oshkosh Student Association email. So depending on those 2 different email lists, one would be me, which is the very much smaller email list where everybody who gets it mostly knows who I am and knows that I am a resource to talk about this, but the other would be through their no reply Oshkosh Student Association email. Well, I don't know if it's no reply, but it would be like the greater their email.
Okay. Might you want to also add some contact information for you on here for the people who receive it that way?
I was wondering that. I wanted to know what you guys would think on that. Would it be inappropriate to have my name listed? Would that create too much confusion with Casey, saying that you can come to me with problems versus immediately what we were hoping is to bypass confusion and just go into the city with issues?
I think the less steps is probably the better.
And leave my name out?
Yeah, I mean,
You might get a lot of phone calls. You never know. I mean,
That's what I was thinking too. I was gonna address
Yeah.
it, so thank you for asking it.
yeah.
If I understood Casey correctly, he wants to be the only one on there. Is that what you said? Yep, okay.
Because there is no longer that second woman that runs the email lists, right? So it's just Casey?
It's just Casey, right?
Okay.
So I have a question about feedback after maybe this goes out and 3 months pass. Is there an opportunity for you to come back then and kind of let us know how it's working, if there are problems?
Sure, I don't see why not, absolutely. I would like to figure out what that feedback would be, how I would know if things are working. I think it might be more, Casey getting calls from people in the university area, that would be a level of feedback. But if I get anything on my end personally, especially from that smaller email list, absolutely, I'd like to keep track of it for you guys.
Okay. So you'll just come in and talk with us if you get something that
Of course.
you want us to be aware of, okay?
Sure, I think that's very important if we're gonna continue this with like a multi-send thing. Because I think that's very important to kind of just re-pushing it and it's like, hi, we're still here, we still wanna help. Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
There are two typos that I found just quickly here. On the second page, it says what to do when I move in guide. So I think that's a double what there. And then on the last page,
Yes.
under how does it work, the last line, although some landlords, I think that's supposed to be plural, may request permission from the tenant to be present during the inspection. So I think that is just supposed to be plural. And then the only other thing that I would add about that is that I still think that it would be, I think it makes sense to encourage tenants to invite the landlord to these inspections. And I know not everybody agrees with that, but I just want to state that again, that I think it, in terms of saving time for fixing things and things like that, to have the landlord there. And I would, personally, I would question if I'm starting a lease and I don't even feel comfortable inviting the landlord to the inspection, I'm not sure that I would ever even want the rent from that landlord. So it just seems odd to me that we're not encouraging the tenants to have the landlord present at the inspections.
isn't that covered in the how does it work section?
Well, what it says is that although some landlords may request permission from the tenant, and I would say I would turn that around, I would say it may be a good idea for the tenant to request the landlord to be there at the inspection, as opposed to the landlord, because I'm not even sure that the landlord is getting notice that you're gonna do this, right? So the landlord won't even know that the inspection is gonna occur unless the tenant asks the landlord to be there. So to me, it would save communication issues, and it would just speed up the process. And sometimes, some of these violations can be taken care of right there on the spot, it's not a big deal, so.
Sure, I think even on my end, I could just word it more ambiguously. Instead of saying some may request, I could say it is common for either the landlord to request or to invite for both. So I could just make that a combined sentence for sure.
Yeah,
I don't know if common is the right term necessarily, but appropriate or allowable. Yeah.
thank you.
I'm not sure I'm comfortable with listing either of those. I think I would leave that last sentence off because I believe that there's that potential for intimidation when the landlord is invited. And I know that's not true in all cases, but in this letter, we don't know who's receiving this. We don't know who their landlord is and what their disposition is. And we do know that we've had a very low rate of tenants responding to our letters in the past. This is supposed to help dissipate that a little bit. So I guess I would be comfortable with leaving it totally off. I know
Well, I guess-
we're seeing it
Again,
from
we're
different points of
just-
view,
we're
Todd,
just
I
seeing it from
know.
a different, and I
Yeah.
just disagree with that. I think
I
that,
agree to disagree with you.
As a renter, Gabby, what would you feel like most comfortable with if you received this letter?
Personally, not as the renter for the first people I rent from, because I do have a good relationship and I would feel comfortable inviting them. And I think even too, if I were to already have this predisposed, like, good relationship, I would alert them. I might suggest deleting the line altogether and removing that question of the tenant who, like, has decided now they want to get an inspection and now they have to decide whether or not they invite their landlord. I would say leave the line off, and then depending on the relationship they already have, I think they can make that decision, personally.
I agree with that.
I also agree. I mean, I was a renter. We've got a really nice landlord right now, but I've had landlords that I would be afraid would retaliate.
But retaliation is illegal, right? And so they can't retaliate. And if you have a
It happens.
my point is that if you have a landlord that is going to retaliate, they're going to retaliate after the inspection or before the, so to me, it doesn't make the whole retaliation argument doesn't make sense to me, because if you have the inspection done and then they find out about it and they're prone to retaliation anyway, they're going to retaliate. And so then, and that's illegal, and that has to be dealt with. But I don't see not inviting them eliminating the retaliation.
Right.
If I might.
But, I mean,
My
like I
cons-
said, I mean, I have even friends that rent, and I don't think they would at all call their landlord at all, just because of past renting experiences also.
Plus, we know that there's at least one major landlord in the campus area that is including threats in their lease agreement. So that might speak to the, like, inevitability of retaliation. But I think in some respects that is, like, I don't want to say the point, but if it's going to happen, it should happen in a, I don't know, a controlled way.
My concern, Todd, is that by inviting a landlord, it gives the landlord the opportunity to say, no, don't allow the inspection. And we do know that there are landlords who do that. And that's where my concern comes in, with including that in the letter and asking the student to invite their landlord. We're opening it up for that, and then the point of the letter does no good. We're not going to be able to increase our inspections.
Well, I guess we'll just disagree.
I don't think the point of the paragraph is to invite the landlord, just to clarify whether or not and under what conditions the landlord can be present, which I think is probably valuable information, but.
Would that be something that Casey could relay if they've already made the decision to call? If they call Casey and they say, what's the landlord situation? Can you explain that briefly, that they're allowed to be there if they want to be there? You don't have to invite them, but they don't, like, you can do it whether they're there or not.
Right, and my thinking is that it's public knowledge of what the checklist is. Landlords know that checklist, or they should. So I don't see that there would be any concern on any landlord's part if the house or apartment or flat is up to snuff. So, I mean, I would think there wouldn't be a concern to have to be present.
And ostensibly, if new tenants are moving in, because this is, in large part, some of the people this message targets are like new renters in the campus area, right? That means that there's been a move-out inspection, ostensibly, and that things have been noted and repaired by the landlord, and that the previous tenant was charged for their security deposit. So I understand what Linda's saying in that regard. Any other questions or comments for Gabby? Questions or comments for us? All right. So if perhaps you can come up with like a target date of sending out this email, and we can communicate our, you can tell Andrea about that, she'll let us know, and then we can get any additional feedback to you before then in order to make it
We
better.
can warn Casey not to take vacation then or anything.
Well, sure. In that case, I guess, school starts on the 3rd, which is the Wednesday. The Monday is the 1st, I then believe. Maybe sometime before, like, the 28th, maybe, 29th.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gabby. We'll move on then to item G on the agenda, the vacant building registry and inspection program. So we have a draft of that code attached to today's packet. And it very much echoes things we've looked at in the past. Can you summarize this for, yeah?
Yes, maybe as an introduction for the viewers at home, we've been talking about a vacant building registration program and in some cases inspection program. This was brought up in the past few months at council and was directed to this body to take a look at. Staff has been studying it over the last couple of months, and we gathered a number of different codes from around the state of Wisconsin and communities that are already doing this. There's been major benefits to them regarding maintenance, regarding contacts, regarding police and fire calls, regarding neighborhood complaints. All kinds of issues can be addressed with this type of program. And we've brought this to the board over the last couple of months for comments. And based on the comments, we've drafted up I guess a municipal code that could be applied in the city of Oshkosh. We've gotten to the point where if you're looking at making changes or tweaks to this before we send it on to council, this would be another opportunity for that to occur. Mr. Prickett has been leading this research and drafting to this point, so thank you to Mr. Prickett for finding the time to do this in the very busy part of the inspection season, as well as Mr. Zarate and Mr. Cable, who have been helping out on this endeavor. So that's kind of the background on this, and we'd be happy to go over some of the most important points regarding the code, if you'd like to go through that.
Sure, please do.
All right, at that, I'm probably going to turn it over to Mr. Prickett because he's drafted 99.9% of this. He's asked, he pinned me down as the code official, so I'm the guy who actually would get the first calls when it comes to what's a call, but it can be appealed from staff to zoning board of appeals. So there is always the appeal process, and maybe with that, I'll shut up and let Mr. Prickett explain what he's got going here.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, the basic framework for it is it's geared more towards foreclosure properties, quote unquote zombie houses, things like that, where we've had issues going back to like 2008 to 2010. We had a lot of issues with vacant properties throughout the city, and trying to track down ownership or somebody that would take responsibility. And we had just hundreds and hundreds of notices that went out for grass violations, just general property maintenance things. So that's what this is kind of geared towards. It does address a few other things. It will cover commercial properties as well. So it's not just residential, it's basically anything that would be a vacant property for an extended period of time, or anything where there is going to be a foreclosure that's going to get filed over at the Winnebago County Courthouse.
Yeah, to highlight that, I think the applicability is 180 consecutive days, or when there's a foreclosure proceeding, which is
I think that's within 30 days, yeah.
within 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not geared for people, it's where it's temporary or between tenants. This is going to have to be vacant for 6 months.
Yeah, and there's numerous exemptions in there for, seasonal houses, things like that. Governmentally owned buildings are exempted. That's pretty typical from all the ordinances we looked at, so.
If they have an active building permit.
Correct. Yep. If it's undergoing renovation, if there's a raised permit that's been issued.
Attorney,
Did you guys all get a chance to read it?
Every word.
I'm sure. I mean, this is good stuff, and if you're ever having a hard time going to sleep, this'll do it for you, so.
Regarding the exemptions, it talks about vacant lots. Is that a blanket exemption? Because up above, it says that it's exempt for 365 days, and you have to apply for that. Is it?
Vacant lots should be just a blanket, because,
blanket.
that would be, any lot where there's no structure,
And
basically.
that would be the same thing for vacation homes?
Vacation homes would get that same exemption.
So, yeah, I think it just needs to be clearer, because it kind of says that you can apply for an exemption for up to 365 days, but it's under 1735.05B. So I just wasn't clear about that. And then, is the 365 after the 180 days? So you've got 180 days, and then it starts 365 again?
So the exemption would be good for 1 year. The 180 days would be that's kind of the trigger for the time frame for something being vacant, for it to kick in to be required to register.
Within that 365 days, is what I was thinking. January 1st, if something became vacant January 1st and it was vacant again, stayed vacant until August 1st, and it didn't qualify for an exemption, then it would have to be on the registration list. If it started out as a vacant lot January 1st, it would never be on the list.
Correct.
Does that answer your question?
If it started out as a vacant lot, it would never be on the list.
Right, in my
And if
mind, it's an exempt property. So there would be no 180 days it would have to qualify for.
And vacation homes, if it was a vacation home on January 1st, it wouldn't, if it became a vacation home after January 1st, some reason you'd have to apply for a year, or would it always be exempt then?
It would only be exempt as long as it's owned by someone who would use it as a vacation home, and at this point in time, we haven't figured out exactly how they'd have to show that to us.
Right.
But over those 180 days or 365 days, just because it's a vacant vacation home, they'd still have to maintain it. So it doesn't exempt them from property maintenance. It might exempt them from having to have it registered. So I want to,
Well, I guess, and that's and I don't know how far we really want to get into this on this committee, but that's one of my questions is, we already have nuisance property violations, right?
yes.
So I'm not quite sure why we need a whole nother code for this, for vacant properties, because if they're a nuisance and they're gonna get fined and written up anyway, right?
You would think it would be that easy, but it's not, unfortunately. I think Mr. Prickett summarized what happened on a large scale, but it still continues to happen in the city, where it's difficult to track down who's responsible to do the maintenance, and to let police and fire know when there's vacant buildings, because when they respond, they want to know whether there's a vacant building or not. They're very much in support of knowing whether they're vacant or not, because that changes their, changes how they do business, if there's a fire or if there's any kind of criminal activity they're investigating, is what they're telling us. They would very much like to know where the vacant buildings are.
Yeah. Under the owner, then also I'm not quite sure if these are supposed to be ands or ors, because you list 4 different types of owners, and I don't know if each one of those then becomes an owner, like if you're an owner and you have a mortgage, are you both owners? Or is that supposed to be or?
Can you tell us where you are, Todd?
That's under section
13.
13.
Under definitions.
Yeah, on definitions, number 13.
The way I
Yep,
interpret
there should
that
be
is
ors after that. Two of them have it, the other one does not. After A, there should be an or.
Oh, I see. Oh,
B
yeah.
has it, C has it, and then you don't need it for D.
Right.
No, we do need it for D.
It's in
No.
there for D.
Yeah.
So, but this is where your problem comes in, right? Where you have these zombie houses where you have an owner that stops making payment to the bank, and then you have a bank that doesn't take ownership, but they still have a mortgage on it. So who is gonna be considered the owner? Are they both considered the owner at that point? Or
Yes.
So then it's kinda like and, but all that has to be sort of like clarified in there, I guess, as to, you know, or and is it under, I don't know, under state law, is it legal to go after the bank as the owner if they haven't actually foreclosed and taken ownership?
Most of in pretty much any mortgage that you have, as terms of the lease, or as terms of the framework for the mortgage, there is a section there, in there where it talks about committing waste and stuff like that, and that the bank or mortgager has the ability to,
The bank
To
has,
take care of
the
it.
bank has the ability to take care of it,
Mm.
but can the city force the bank to take care of it, I guess is my question, because the bank, that's the problem with these zombie houses, right?
Right.
The bank says, well, I don't own it, I have a loan on it, I don't own it. And so, is there a mechanism really to allow you to force the lender to fix it?
this ordinance is pretty much identical to the one they have in Kenosha. They've been using since 2011, I think. And they haven't had any issues with that, so.
As an example, Buck staff would have qualified into this program, because in that case, there was an owner, but there was also a bank involved, and the city did end up suing the bank for performance of some maintenance obligations. And in that case, it sounded like the court agreed that the bank was responsible for something like that. So that's my commercial side. I'm less familiar with the residential
Yeah.
side, but that's what my experience has been with the commercial.
Okay.
And Buck staff, I'd highlight, it's maybe not your purview, but that was a big deal in the city at the time, where it was a very bad situation where nobody wanted to maintain it, and they were actively trying to take everything out of the building that suppressed fire and alarms and things of that nature, and that would prevent that. This code, I believe, would prevent that from happening as well.
Any other questions, discussion?
I think you did a fantastic job with this, Mr. Prickett. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Mark, I appreciate that.
It's got a lot of meat to it, a lot in it. And I know it took a lot of time, so thanks. Do you want us to, is this an action item?
Yep.
It's eligible for action.
Do we have any
I would.
motions for action?
I would make a motion that we accept this as written.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I would be opposed.
Any abstention? Six to 1 to 0. The motion passes. Moving on then to item H, inspection updates.
Over the last month and a half, I did 2 inspections for the program, one about a month ago and one actually today. We will be sending out another group of letters today for Section B. I believe 99 letters are going to go out, so we'll see what type of response we get there.
Is it safe to assume that approximately 100 had gone out for the 2 that you had?
Correct.
And how many violations did you find on those 2?
I believe the first one was, there were 6 violations, and I have to do the report in I think it was 3 or 4 today.
So pretty much we have a constant average, don't we?
Questions for Casey pertaining to inspections? Anything else you want us to know?
At this time.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item I, the Oshkosh Saturday Farmers Market. Who represented us there and when?
Actually, no one.
Oh, it was storming terribly.
It was a bad storm. I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news is that we didn't go. The good news is that the city has purchased a pop-up for us, which is housed in the office on the second floor. So for Javaltis and Ernst, who will be there this week, it's all in a neat little rolly bag, and it's all set to go, and I can give you a little bit more information about that later.
Okay.
But no, Katrina and I discussed it as we looked out the window at 6 o'clock in the morning and read all of our travel blogs and said, no way are we going out there. I also have a concern because the tent doesn't have any kind of weights with it. So just so you're aware of that, I don't know if you want to get milk cartons or something to fill with water, or I don't want it to get blown away and have the city have liability for that.
Okay, I can take care of that.
And then we do need to add October 5th on here, because, my bad, I guess I didn't report that last month. So we need to find somebody to staff that. And I would be willing to offer to do that, seeing as how I reneged on the last one. If anybody else would like to work with me that day or is able to.
I can see if I can.
Okay.
I'm available too.
Okay. Excellent. And I must say too, Gabby had planned to work with us last time, and I failed to let her know that we weren't going to be there, so thank you for understanding. 6 in the morning, I'm not at my best, I confess. But you're welcome to come the other dates too, any that work for you. So thank you.
Is are all the other supplies and stuff in the?
That's also in there. Andrea has a real nice bin with everything in it in one space, and
Cool.
it's easily transportable.
And when do I need to be there by?
We need to be there by 7,
7, okay.
I think.
So you have to be in and out if you're taking a vehicle in by 7:30, but
Okay,
Okay.
shouldn't be a problem. I'll come by Friday and grab that stuff.
Okay.
All right. Move on then to item J, social and traditional media update.
We've had a few postings. I think Mr. Cable can report.
I can repost the farmer's market, or when the dates you'll be there. I will be posting a map of the district that we're sending the letters to. And if anyone has any other information they'd like me to share, just let me know so I can do that.
All right. Any questions or comments or suggestions for social media?
And as far as traditional media, I think you've arranged to meet with the Winnebago Apartment Association in September.
Correct.
Really?
At their first meeting.
Just you're going there?
I believe John and I are going.
What are you going to talk about?
We're going to bring some pictures of the violations we have found, and we'll bring a copy of the checklist to discuss those items.
May I suggest that you bring a copy of Attorney Forsgren's letter about the lease agreement? Because I am curious as to what the apartment association's stance on that is.
Okay.
What was the lease agreement? What was it?
Andrea, did you get my email asking for? I know some of us hadn't had copies of those in the past, so I asked her to make a few more. I think we need to go to Steve and Todd and me, because I gave you mine, Danny, right?
You
Do you
did.
still have that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Next one, if you don't have one.
Essentially, a lease agreement, like promises retaliation for complying with the with the inspection ordinance, and the campus attorney sees this as a blatant sort of
So it says
violation.
in here, this is Star Properties lease agreement, is that,
That's what it indicates, yeah.
and where,
The last item, I believe, like the very last item.
At the last meeting that we had, 2 meetings ago, it must have been in May, we had first seen this then, and we had asked that it be passed on to the attorney to
Yes.
take a look at. And nothing happened in June, I know, because we were busy with other things. Has that happened yet?
Yes, it has, and Mr. Forsgren can't attend. We actually asked him to attend the meeting as well. He couldn't attend anything in the summertime, but he would be here for the October meeting, is my understanding.
Yeah, I'm still trying to pin him down on the date.
And what about the city attorney? Has she been given this information?
I didn't give her that specifically until I knew for sure he'd be able to make that, because I wanted both attorneys to hear the same story and not have 2 attorneys give you 2 different opinions. They don't hear the same story at the same time. So I'm trying to coordinate 2 attorney schedules.
All right, I think we can
Good luck with that.
safely put that or move that to that particular discussion to future agenda items, as we are just talking about media right now.
Yes.
Yes. Any other questions or comments regarding to media? All right, thank you, Casey. Moving on then to item K, the Rental Housing Advisory Board 2019 Action Plan and Strategic Plan, which we finally adopted at our last meeting. For the viewers at home and around the world, we, as a board, have put together several key areas of focus for a sort of plan, a mission, if you will, for this board, and that includes advising the city on rental housing issues, creating and providing educational materials on rental housing issues in the city of Oshkosh, looking into training programs, assisting in perhaps developing training programs for landlords and tenants, outreach such as participation at the farmers market, so getting out and talking to people, having people come to these meetings, those sorts of things, and then advising on rental housing policy and code changes. Does anyone have any? Has anyone thought about any specific areas of the action plan they're perhaps interested in, I don't know, spearheading or generating a discussion about for next time?
I would be happy to look at some of the policy and code changes.
Okay.
I'd also be interested in training for landlords on compliance. Same thing with tenants.
Mm-hmm. I read in the Journal Sentinel the other day that there's a website that exists now which indicates the number of evictions and locations of evictions and things like that for landlords in the city of Milwaukee. Now, eviction is a much greater problem in Milwaukee than it is here, but as we have seen here, there are significant problems with code violations and things like that. I'm going to be looking a little more into that. I think that meets our outreach and educational materials parts of the mission. So I will plan on contacting the people that made that website just to see sort of how they did it, if they think it's effective, so we can perhaps discuss feasibility for similar implementation here in the city. I do know all the information is available in terms of a tenant can go on to the housing inspections website and look up code violations and look up building permits and things like that. But having all of that in one area to access might be beneficial. So I'll be looking into that for next time too.
I have a question. Since we've been discussing sort of legal matters, I'm wondering if there needs to be something on here regarding that we monitor legal issues or explore certain legal issues that come to our attention, such as that lease agreement. I have something else I want to bring up at our next meeting, and it's a legal matter. So is there space in here that can be addressed? I'm not sure where we can put that in.
There's the policy review section under advise on the action plan. The action plan, Linda, not the strategic plan.
Okay, I guess that would work.
Sure. So
Okay,
if you want to research that issue, and we'll add it to the agenda for next month.
okay, the question I raised to you earlier?
Mhm.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions on the strategic plan or the action plan moving forward? I would point out that passing, or the recommendation of the vacant building inspection ordinance is one of our specific action plan items, so we've achieved that. Let's congratulate ourselves later. But as well as doing the farmers market outreach and stuff, having students here, having members of the community here is all well. And if you are listening at home, if you have rental housing issues, I would encourage you to come and talk to us, perhaps at next month's meeting, which we will now move on to item L of the agenda, future agenda items. So ideally we'll have, yes.
I was going to point out that I believe we went to every other month, so it
Correct.
wouldn't be next month, it would be.
Oh, sorry, the October meeting
Yes,
in
Be
2
on
months.
October 9th.
October 9th, yes.
So we've already discussed having our attorneys here, the city attorney as well as the campus attorney. Linda, your item?
Pardon me?
The item you want to put on the agenda for next month.
It has to do with landlords requesting that tenants give 2 months' notice as opposed to 1 month's notice to move. That's an issue that just concerns me. It's problematic and sort of unfeasible for more folks who are impoverished to be able to move. So I just want to have that discussion during our next meeting.
Okay. I'm interested in this ADA compliance issue that was raised also pertaining to parking in front of buildings. So I'll do some research on that in the next 2 months too, as well as possibilities of more online resources, such as the website I mentioned earlier. So bring that to the agenda as well. But I do think addressing the problematic lease is pretty important for October. That should be or perhaps be the main focus of that meeting, all else being equal, of course. Any other future agenda items? Anything we missed? In that case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? This meeting is adjourned. Thanks.